Hi, this is Mad Dog Hugs here. Hey, I just wanted to bring an update here to the Luka Doncic trade rumors and news that's been breaking. There's been some front office leaks recently as the Mavs have kind of tried to, justify the trade and all that. Nico Harrison had a press conference with Jason Kidd there who honestly looked kind of shocked the whole time. And then after that, more information kept coming out. And one of the things that just hit the Twitter timeline recently was that, and again, I'm not showing Twitter here, I'm showing Blue Sky, and I have reasons for that. It's just Twitter's kind of chaotic, but it seems like the Mavs are going through, fans and everyone around the organization that is kind of in shock by this are going through these stages of grief of losing Luka, and I get that. Apparently, a lot of this had to do with two factors. Luka had a set of own coaches that he worked with that the Mavs didn't necessarily approve of. Even as they brought in new coaches and things like that, they really they wanted him to be more committed to them and their coaches. And he had his own set. And that kind of rubbed them a little the wrong way. I don't know if it was like the front office or if it was a specific coach or coaches that didn't approve of it. But it seems like there might have been some petty jealousy there, or just some people that were upset that he was doing this on his own. And then the second thing I'll say is he also apparently to them had a conditioning issue, which might have been an extension of his drinking. Apparently Luka likes to drink beer, and they'd asked him maybe to cut back or stop entirely. Supposedly Jason Kidd had tried to address some of these things directly with Luka, maybe making some suggestions. I don't know if it was whether regarding him having his own private coaches or his conditioning, as they put it. And I just want to say, in all of this, it just makes him more of a legend in my eyes. Like Larry Bird, Larry Legend as he's known, was a guy who could call his shots, make them, and make you look like a fool in the process. And yes, he could drink a six-pack of beer after the game. And I very much think Luka's in that mold of player. You can't tell me he can't call his shot. You can't tell me that boy ain't nice. As a matter of fact, and I want to get this out of the way now, I don't think his conditioning impacted his play negatively in a way that didn't fit Luka's game. You know what I mean? Like, he wasn't like a high flyer, super athletic guy coming in the league anyway. And if anything, the extra weight just helped him play more bully ball, in my opinion, which he's really good at. Have you seen that man in the post? One of the most efficient scorers around the rim. I'm just showing the timeline here on Blue Sky of me posting some information I found. And what's funny is I found a photo on Twitter, like the day after he lands in LA, of him having a beer. Quick editor's note. While recording this, I was called out on Blue Sky for not citing some sources. While I am still trying to track down who initially put out the rumors of Luka's drinking, I do know that, in fact, Rob Pelinka had cited these same rumors to talk down the Mavericks and what they were asking for in getting Dalton Connect and other assets removed from the trade. I'm going to play that clip right now for you all to see.
Yeah, and there's a weeks-long process. One of my sources inside the Lakers was indicating that the deal was bigger, and I think you guys were literally joking about this last night, that there were two firsts, and there was Dalton Connect, and the deal got whittled down because I think Rob Pelinka was able to convince the Dallas Mavericks that Luka is a lot of risk. Yeah. You guys are right for trying to look at this way, because this guy, is drinking or is whatever, his weight problem, whatever it is.
And I pulled this, I gave credit to the guy, and right now you can see my notifications are kind of blowing up. And I don't think Luka has a drinking problem. I think the Mavs have an issue with Luka just drinking beer in general. Doesn't matter if it was one, if it was 6 a night, if it was every other night, if it was once a week. I think the conditioning, as they put it, was an issue. And I think that part of that had to do with, what he's putting in his body, his diet, not just his workouts and things like that. And I think, part of that could be beer. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with him enjoying a beer. The world is full of chaos. We all kind of need to take the edge off every now and again. And he plays a very stressful, high visibility sport with lots of eyes on him, with highs and lows and things like that. It's probably one, maybe a couple guys in the organization, coaches, front office, that took issue with this and, really made that bigger than it was, and which is what led to the trade. And I'm going to guess that these people had some kind of positions of power. It could have even been Nico Harrison himself. And I just want to say a lot of the stuff coming from the Mavs organization is code talk. And the Mavs fans right now, I've been on Reddit, I've been on Twitter, I've been on Blue Sky. They're all going through these stages of grief looking for stuff, and they're freaking out. And they're pulling on every thread they can to see where it leads. And that's how I found this information. It's really hard to find out who is the true source of this information. It's just kind of cropping up here and there in certain posts. The beer connection specifically came about because of the resurfaced clip of, I think it was Michael Finley taking his beer away in the finals. Actually, I can pull that back up here again. This clip here, as you're seeing, resurfaced, and a lot of people started doing some digging into it. And now that the conditioning stuff has come out, people are looking into what like little nuggets have been said in the past and things that are coming out now. And there's someone in that front office in the Mavericks organization that's leaking stuff out, and it's getting onto Twitter timelines. And if you follow the threads in NBA and stuff like that, you'll find people kind of talking about this stuff. In no way do I think this justifies the trade. I still think the Mavericks overall lost the trade. You're going to get more out of Luka being 25 than you will Anthony Davis at, I believe, 31 right now, who's turning, 32 later this month or something. And that said, I do kind of think AD's maybe a better fit, even if not redundant at the position, because obviously they have Lively, they have Gafford, now they have AD. They're probably going to run a double big lineup. That's fine. That's great. That's good for the Mavs. But to Mavs fans who had invested in the franchise, who spent these years watching and celebrating Luka since his rookie year, this just feels like a stab in the back, because there was no indication that this was going to happen, and that was on purpose. The Mavericks feared that if it got out they were shopping him around, that Luka would become disgruntled and upset. And the conditioning was such a serious thing for them that's why they traded him. They kind of said it. If it doesn't make a lot of sense to people, because like I said, you look at Luka's game, you look at the results of his play, and you don't see the translation of, yeah, maybe he put on some pounds, and nobody knew he was 270 pounds until they said it. It didn't add up. Everybody's trying to make sense of it. So that's why, like, I think it had more to do with his lack of response to what they said, and he probably, had a beer or something, someone maybe on the team narked on him, or it could have been photos online. Like, you can look up, people snapping pictures of celebrities out in public. Something happened that ruffled their feathers in recent weeks that caused them to really have this conversation, Nico Harrison and Rob Pelinka, and the potential to shop and trade him. So there was some catalyst recently that pushed this forward. And I don't necessarily know what it is, but it is funny to know that someone took a photo yesterday of him out with a couple of his coaches and friends in a restaurant having a beer. So just interesting information that's come to light. But it's just weird because the Mavs gave no indication as to having issue with Luka. There was no indication of him being shopped around. Danny Ainge has come out and said, I didn't even know that I was part of a Luka Doncic trade to LA. The Jazz being the third team in that trade. The fact that he didn't even know it was a Luka Doncic trade is more shocking. Like I said, they didn't want this information out, which is hilarious because as this is going forward, there's someone in that organization, whether they're undermining Nico Harrison by leaking information, maybe it was Nico himself that made the asshole remark, and that's why that person leaked it online. Maybe they didn't like the fact that he said, conditioning this and whatever other reasons for trading him in that press conference. So they're like, no, here's the specifics. And whatever it is that's leaking online, I'm doing my best to dig down to figure out who is the source on Twitter. I can't actually find it. So my thoughts are someone is leaking it to people on Twitter who are then repeating it, but they're not identifying the source of this information. And maybe that's to protect the person in the Mavericks organization. It could be a family member or a friend. It could just be, someone that they respect closely. But I do find it interesting that it's getting leaked there, and it's not through the normal like journalistic pipelines. You're not going to hear this from Shams or anyone like that. This is either some kind of damage control, or I don't know. It feels so weird. Like, why is all this coming out and coming up now? And like, I don't know. It seems petty in a way. And that's all I can say is like, this trade was so bad. It does feel petty in a way. Like the Mavericks, to make a move like this, had to be caught up in their feelings. You know what I mean? They weren't thinking straight. You're trading an MVP caliber player for this season, who's on a hot streak for all NBAs, who's definitely a potential face of the league here soon, and whatever franchise he's on. And you make a move on him for reasons that make no sense, citing he might not even want to sign here. Why wouldn't he want to sign there? Were you guys like harassing him about his dietary habits? Was it becoming an issue where like on the daily you guys were seeing him work with his coaches and you were caught up in your feelings because he didn't want to work with your coaches? I don't get it. There's something there. Someone who's attending practices, who's talking to coaches and the other players, that just didn't like what Luka was doing, how he was going about his career, how he was going about his business as an NBA player, how he was taking care of his body. Someone in that organization felt that Luka doing these things was selling himself short and therefore the organization short. And they felt some kind of way about it. And I'm going to guess that it's somebody in the front office, most likely. The Mavs have multiple investors. They have minority and majority owners and stuff like that. And every time you have an investment group like that, a bunch of people, a lot of hands in the pot, you can kind of get groupthink going on, which kind of can sometimes lead to irrational thinking. All it takes is a seed of an idea, and then people going through and talking it through, and letting it build and maturate to become a bad idea and like to act upon it. And what I mean by that is, yes, a group can brainstorm together and they can have lots of ideas, and sometimes that brilliance comes out of that. But if there's nobody there to put them in check, to question them, then you can get bad decisions. And I think part of this is, like I said, if they don't see he's investing in himself, his body, in the organization in the ways they want, like I said, taking care of himself for the conditioning thing, his diet, his routine, all that stuff, that's him investing in himself, and which is him therefore investing in the organization. They invest money into this organization, and for them, that's all that matters. People that own that team, any investment group you look at it, that's all that matters is the money. So if they feel like, hey, you're messing with my money, that's the way they're going to go. These people think championships is the only way to drive up the value of the organization. And being that they fell short, maybe they're using him as a little bit of a scapegoat in his conditioning. And they see Anthony Davis as a guy who's committed to his conditioning, who's committed to that organization, who, because Nico has a previous relationship as his Nike rep, is going to do right by him. And Nico will do right by ID. I'm not saying none of that. But that's the reason you get the trade between Nico and Rob Pelinka, that Nike connection. That's the reason AD was the preferred target, was because Nico knew him. It's just so strange, the justification for all this, because what's even crazier about this is, why not keep Luka? Why didn't they shop Kyrie? Why didn't they shop anything else? They could have made different moves to build that team out and still retain Luka and be a contender. This move specifically feels weird. And it's because, yes, they're still a contender technically this year, maybe next year, maybe even a year after that. But all the players on their team that are the superstar caliber players, Kyrie and Anthony Davis, are already in the 30s. They're only getting older, and you're going to be putting more of a burden on them as time goes on, and that shortens your championship window. Luka, who by all accounts has said he's going to re-sign with the Mavericks, that he intended on staying there. He never wanted to leave. He was committed to that community. I mean, he put such a heartfelt statement out when he left. You can tell that he was kind of hurt. There was no indication he was going to leave. He said that no one in his camp would ever give any indication to the Mavericks that he was going to not sign there. So them saying as part of the reasoning for trading him is he might not have signed here. He was available to go wherever he wanted. First off, you guys had the Supermax available to you, which is a way for small market teams, even though I don't see Dallas as a small market team. And I hate that terminology. If you have an NBA team, you're not a small market in my eyes. You only have people who see you as a small market. And I think that's a major media problem, that media coverage problem in the NBA. I think it's something that needs to be addressed. I think it's the reason ratings are down is because anytime small market teams are up, you have these people on ESPN who have their Knicks and Lakers bias, because unfortunately, sports media happens to be based out of both New York and LA primarily, which means you get a lot of New York and LA fans. If those two teams aren't on top, they aren't contenders. The correspondents who report on the NBA, they're just going to show their bias. You get it even with former player analysts. Typically, they'll show bias towards their old teams or the guys they played with. You do get some analysts and insiders, like I look at Brian Windhorst, who keeps it real, and he's pretty level-headed, and he'll say it like it is, even though we all know he's a Cleveland guy, he's a LeBron guy. When he shoots straight from the hip, he tells no lies. And there's very little of that left around the NBA. It's one of the reasons I love JJ Redick when he was an analyst, was because he kept it real. Even though some of his takes might have been considered hot, he gave real insight as a former player. He put people in check for showing their biases, and we need more of that around the NBA. That said, it's very strange to trade Luka Doncic on the idea that he might leave, even though I think we all know, including Luka, he wasn't going to leave. And then you say it's his conditioning, and that might be led to his recent injuries, and that might become a systemic issue, and you can see his career or whatever being derailed by it. Anthony Davis has also had injuries. He has an injury history. He's kind of known for missing lots of time. For a time, he was seen as the glass man. I hate this nickname because I don't like ripping on guys for being hurt. Even though I will say, and I've said it in the past, and I'll always repeat it, to be great, you have to play. You have to be available for your team. You can't be a great and miss 50% of your career. I'm sorry. It's true. Players become Hall of Fame players based on how they played. And those moments of how you play when you show it generally come in the postseason, and you're generally going to get there to the postseason with healthier teams, and you're going to have deeper runs with healthier teams. So I'm just saying superstars' health directly contributes to that. So maybe the Mavericks see that on the wall, and that's the reason for the trade. But out of all the players to use that as an excuse to trade for, Anthony Davis, it seems kind of wild. Now, Anthony Davis, let's say he has a second half renaissance of his career here. Let's say he has some healthy years ahead of him. All this work he's putting into himself and his body and his conditioning, maybe it mitigates the downtime in his career and all that. And that'd be fantastic. I would love that, because Anthony Davis, when he's healthy, is a beast. And I hate playing against him as a Suns fan. It definitely feels like the Mavericks organization was caught up in their feelings. And that's the only thing that makes sense. I've seen the comment online where Rob Pelinka's response to the potential, hypothetical Luka trade was, "You're joking, right?" That should have been the first clue to Nico Harrison. This was a batshit crazy trade. And it wasn't. They went through with it. Rob Pelinka got an official trade offer. I think the rumors, I think it's been stated he sat on that for 2 days before pulling the trigger. And the reason it doesn't leak is because it's just between a very select few people that were involved in the trade discussion. Again, going back to, this is the part that makes the most sense to me. The Mavericks didn't want the league to know. They didn't want Luka to know, because then Luka would become disgruntled. And the rumor mill would have probably gotten worse during that time period. Just look at what's happening with Jimmy and all these other past trade requests and things like that. When a player does get disgruntled, it generally doesn't go well for anyone involved. And the fear there also is, not only might it could have driven up the asking price, it could have, in their eyes, it could have driven down the asking price if he goes and chooses which teams he wants to go to and things like that. The Mavericks feel like their hands are tied behind their back. They can't make the trade for the player they want on the terms they want. Why wouldn't you sign him to Supermax and then trade him? You know what I mean? You could have got Supermax players back. Other teams would have definitely been open to it. Hell, you re-sign him to Supermax and all that. You could probably trade him for both like DeMar and Zach LaVine. I know the salary caps probably don't work. I didn't even look into any of that. He has that level of talent, though, to get back to like perennial all-star players, all-star caliber players. To get back just AD, I mean Max Christie too, but just AD really seems very, very, very short-sighted. My notifications on Blue Sky are going wild. I have people call me out saying, I think Luka has a drinking problem. I don't. I think in my eyes, it's only adding to his like legendary status that, you know, he drinks in defiance of the Mavericks request and still balls out. People have made comments about Luka's weight in the past. Did that in any way mean he had a down year? No. He's had 5 straight All-NBA years. 5 straight. And every year since his rookie year, he's come in and people have made comments about his maybe putting on weight in the offseason. And here we are after 5 years, going into his 6th year, or we're in his 6th year, and he's 5 straight all NBAs, and he was in the finals last year. And like I said, this moment is probably very telling of why he got traded. Someone there tapped Michael Finley and said, hey, go get that beer out of his hand. Because whoever it was, I guarantee did not want to be in this clip. They knew Luka was on camera, and they sent Michael Finley, who they knew Luka exactly would just do this, shrug it off. I'm telling you, there's whoever sent Michael Finley in there to grab that beer after the Western Conference Finals, that person was in Nico Harrison's ear or was Nico Harrison himself. Hi, Mad Dog Hugs here. Editor's note again. Since I had to go and cite my source, it did occur to me that it probably was Nico Harrison that sent Michael Finley to grab that beer. It's also probably Nico Harrison himself who gave Rob Pelinka that information. Going back to the relationships, Rob Pelinka and Nico Harrison were close from the Kobe days when Nico Harrison was Kobe's Nike rep. They also continued that relationship all the way through the AD acquisition, as Nico Harrison was Anthony Davis's Nike rep as well. And in all those years, Rob Pelinka and Nico Harrison had become close. So the source was probably Nico Harrison himself, who had leaked that information to Rob Pelinka without knowing it, probably in offhanded comments and in conversations over the years. And probably came to him at some point. He's like, hey, I have an issue with one of my players. He might have even said, I have an issue with Luka. Tried to talk to him about, you know, maybe cutting back on the beers, and I'm getting no results. Can you help me? And then you fast forward however long between those conversations and the trade, and Rob Pelinka's thinking to himself, well, I don't want to give up Dalton Connect. Oh, I don't want to give up these first-round picks. Let me convince you why Luka's a risk. He's 25 years old. He has a drinking problem. Blah, 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 blah. Anyway, that's my 2 cents on it. Tell me what you think down in the comments. Please like, comment, subscribe. Peace.